Terry, I'm trying to pick out the mountains in the background there.
That's up on the Denali Highway.
Yeah, but the mountain, the high peak to the left, is that Mount Brooks?
Uh, I don't know.
I think I think it is. If that is that from like the South Viewpoint?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, that's Mount Brooks.
And I'd like
That
to
was
point
the
out that this is actually the back of my office, and that's a Christmas tree.
yes.
I was going to
wondering
say,
about
where's
that.
that Christmas
I'm a little
tree?
behind schedule.
Hey, it's never too early to start celebrating.
That's a good way to look at it.
Mount Brooks was the first peak I ever climbed in Alaska in 1994.
Oh.
Wow.
It's just about 16,000 feet, and it was the first mountain I ever climbed as well. So it was definitely a little outside of my expertise. So, but I lived through it.
You're adventurous.
Yeah, it gave me the bug. I climbed a lot more since then, but that's a pretty unique backdrop. So when I saw that pop up, I was like, hey, I think I know where that is.
It's definitely better to look at than what's behind me in my home office here. So.
I'm at a point now where I am definitely sick of my home office.
Oh, I think we all are.
It used to never be a big deal because I travel so much. I was on the road more than 50 to 75% of the time. And now I'm going on, over 3 solid months. And some days it feels like I haven't got out of this chair.
Yeah, I think we can all relate. I feel like I work more now than before, just because it's here all the time. And I always feel like, oh, well, I could just go do this.
It's funny you say that. That is the feedback that we're getting from a lot of our folks. So, we started out talking to folks when this first kind of set in to help people be more productive. And now the conversation's kind of shifted to, hey, you need to be a little bit less productive.
Yeah.
Because everybody's just kind of working too much because they don't know how to check out if they weren't used to that balance. Right? It's hard to leave the office when it's downstairs.
Mm-hmm.
So it is definitely a challenge.
Well, I think we're going to.
Yeah, go ahead. That's what I was going to say.
Oh, okay, great. Well, I think we're going to get started then. So, okay, at this time, I'd like to welcome everyone. Welcome our Anchorage Chamber members to our June 8th version of the Make It Monday Forum, one of many virtual forums we've done over the past few weeks. I'm Bruce Bustamante. I'm the president and CEO of the Anchorage Chamber, and really glad you folks could join us today. And I'd also like to thank Tasha Swan, who really takes ownership for all of our Make It Monday forums and getting great programs and content, and helps us from the technology side. I had a little bit of a glitch this morning, but she's there to save us all. So with that, I also want to thank our sponsor of our Make It Monday forums, and that's Alaska 529. You never know what will spark your child's curiosity, and Alaska 529 can help you prepare, save in Alaska, study anywhere. So again, a big thank you to our friends at Alaska 529. Today's webinar is very timely and relevant to what many Anchorage businesses are experiencing through this business disruption. Dave Bailey with Arctic IT will talk about the critical role technology plays in today's world and how you can leverage it to ensure your business is ready for the new normal. So before I go in with a little bit more of a bio on Dave and introduce the person that's co-presenting with him, Mary Gasperlin, I'd like to introduce we have a member presentation today. And so at this time, I'd like to hand it over to Terry Allard of Wilson Albers for the Anchorage Chamber Member Spotlight. So Terry, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. Thanks everybody for joining us today. I am Terry Allard. I am the Business Development Executive here at Wilson Albers. Wilson Albers is an employer services organization, and we work with employers to develop and execute on strategies in several areas. HR, employee benefits, retirement, and also workers' comp and general liability. As an Alera Group company, we're part of a national firm that gives us access to resources to efficiently help employers execute on their strategies. We've developed a playbook to help employers implement policies, procedures, and protocols for working in the COVID-19 environment. It's a customized all-in-one solution for employers. In one example, we used it recently. We worked with the CEO at one of our clients who initially had the let's get everybody back in the work site mentality when the city and the state started to ease restrictions. But other management and employees were concerned about the risk. They saw that many employees were already at work. They were just working from home rather than from the office. And they raised concerns with the CEO. So our people sat down with the CEO and worked through a strategy to help manage the team and to develop a more comprehensive strategic approach. The employees saw that management had put thought into doing what made sense and that they were concerned with their safety and the safety of the community. Those who were asked to return to the physical work site understood the rationale behind it and saw that measures had been taken for safety. Those who were working efficiently from home continued to do that, but they felt like they had really the support through technology, policies, and other considerations. So this employer has been able to resume operations that had been suspended, either partially or fully, and they've restored much needed revenue to the organization, as well as service for clients and work for employees. On the benefits side of the house, we help employers develop a multi-year strategy to provide benefits for their workforce while containing costs and leveraging technology for efficient administration. For example, we developed a cookbook for successful open enrollment and ongoing communication with employees in a virtual environment. It can be customized to your taste. For example, if you're vegan, you can use tofu, or you can add chicken or beef if that's your preference, so to speak. And this solution includes benefit administration and HRIS systems as well. So the COVID client has forced many employers to rethink their open enrollment strategies. We have one client, for example, with over 100 employees in multiple locations and different cities, who has historically done open enrollment by doing large in-person meetings. So we had to pivot to a virtual environment. We did several recorded sessions and some online access to written materials, and had to turn that around in a short period of time, and they've gotten very good reviews from employees on that. The recent CARES Act, which allows for more flexibility to retirement plan, election, and loans, has generated a lot of questions from employers and employees about the changes and the new rules. So we've been spending considerable time consulting with our clients on the right approach to making changes that are appropriate but don't result in unintended consequences. One of our largest retirement plan clients had 2 days of individual consults scheduled with their employees before everything hit with COVID. So we took that to an individual Zoom meeting format that has become particularly pertinent for those employees given what's going on in the investment world right now. And as expected, COVID-19 is also generating a multitude of questions from employers related to workers' comp claims, premiums, and calculating renewals. We at Wilson Albers are your one-stop resource for assistance with all of these services. After today's meeting, Tasha's going to send a document out for reference for everybody. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Terry. And I know we work very closely with your company, and you provide a great service for us here at the Chamber as well. So again, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, now for our main presentation, Dave Bailey is President and CEO of Arctic IT. Through Dave's leadership, Arctic IT is the go-to technology partner for clients in the government, tribal, and commercial sectors. Dave has worked at Arctic IT since the company's inception in 2003 and has held a variety of positions with the company, including Chief Technology Officer. And Also, Dave holds a Master of Science in Cybersecurity at Marysville University and resides in New York with his family. So at this time, Dave, thank you very much for joining us. We're glad to have you.
Well, thank you, Bruce and team. Great to be here. So I think as we start, and it was good to have that little bit of introduction to set the stage for COVID-19 has definitely caused us to look at many things differently. Many conversations over the past several months have started and continue to begin with the term unprecedented. In other words, there's been no precedence for how we deal with this. When we think about business continuity, traditionally, we think of things like natural disasters. In Alaska, it could be an earthquake, it could be a volcano, it could be just a massive amount of snow, right? And then, but now all of a sudden, it's not just the normal hazards that we would face in a business continuity situation. It's my entire workforce and the economy has shut down for a period of months, and I was not prepared for that. So the reality is now, as we go forward into our planning and our budget exercises for next year and looking forward, we have to remember that the precedence has been set. In other words, there now is precedence. We know some of the challenges we've had, so how can we make sure we're in a good position to respond to that? So we're going to talk to you a little bit more about cloud strategy and how that situation can be improved for you as you look forward. The benefits of the cloud as far as it relates to business continuity and a modern workplace, and specifically around the security of your information during a lot of those changes. All right, so one of the key things that before any of these COVID-19 related absences from the workplace were put in front of us, most of the time when we step into a business opportunity at Arctic IT, people typically look at siloed teams, and that used to mean they had different systems they were working on. There was duplicate data entry, manual processes, insufficient tracking, and different security concerns around that. And then everybody gets out of the workplace and has to work in a remote environment and then still access that. These things all become compounded, right? So what have we been able to point out for different clients as they look at returning back to work and preparing for the fact that they don't want to have to face those kind of challenges again? So cloud strategy as it relates to business continuity. First thing as we start talking about the cloud is to say, okay, well, I want to make sure I understand what types of cloud there are. There are multiple types of clouds. When we look at public cloud, that is the one that most of us are familiar with. We will see things like Microsoft 365, for example, as a public cloud service, iCloud as a public cloud service, Google Cloud, Amazon Cloud, those are all public cloud services. So that means typically you're going to find a multitude of different cloud service vendors in that public cloud offering that out to the marketplace. Then we have things like private cloud. Many times a large enterprise or a large business will offer a cloud-based environment that's internal to its network to serve up web-based resources to its users. But that kind of infrastructure is typically reserved for a larger enterprise or someone that co-locates its environment into someone else's data center. And then in some cases, we also have industry that might be located one place and have other locations down maybe in the lower 48. And it might combine both some public cloud and private cloud. And we'll refer to that as a hybrid, right? So they might have a little bit of both. And then we might have someone that has eggs in a couple different baskets. For example, you might use Microsoft 365 for a lot of your services, and you might use AWS, Amazon Web Services, for some of the other applications that you might subscribe to or host. That would mean that you have a multi-cloud strategy where you're using a combination of hybrid, private, and maybe public cloud services. So there is more than one cloud, and typically, believe it or not, even a small business will utilize a little bit of everything if they have a good cloud strategy. right? So why do we talk about cloud versus on-premise? Well, clearly we all have a different understanding of if we had all of our eggs in an on-premise solution and we all had to work remote, there's a lot of infrastructure to get from my home workstation through a virtual private network down to my resources in the office. How do I get access to that? Is it a virtual desktop session? Am I accessing applications that really aren't designed to run through that thick of a network connection? So there's some challenges there. So hardware, application security, and bandwidth, those are really important considerations when I have to work remote. The cloud makes a lot of that less expensive, easy to set up, easy to turn on and turn off, and that refers to scale. So think about if you had maybe 10 different server-based applications. Some of them might have been virtualized, some of them might have been physical in your office, and then this crisis hit. To use all those, you have to have all of them running at the same time. You have to maintain them. You have to have them working. But if you don't need as much utilization out of them because your business has actually been shut down or the volume has decreased, if you're in the cloud, you're able to scale back the services that you have. You're able to dial down how much compute power and storage and things like that that you may have reserved in an on-premise environment for growth that you really don't need. So the cloud scales to your requirements based upon the impact or the amount of volume you have at the time. So an example of continuity in the face of what we've all just learned, if I moved most of my on-premise operations into the cloud and used a server infrastructure up there, I can set that up for the power I need right now on this day. I can dial it up if my business increases, and hopefully for everybody that's going to be the situation. But if I have to face this again, maybe next year, this time of year next year, and I want to dial it back, I can do that. So I'm not spending as much money while I'm seeing a little bit of a dip in my business, okay? Low maintenance, fault tolerance, and geo-redundancy. Those are the three biggest things about continuity when we look at the cloud. I don't have to take care of a lot of moving parts because I don't have ownership of them. And part of what I'm paying for is that fault tolerance from that cloud provider. Fault tolerance means that if a hard drive goes, a power supply goes, some key aspect of my infrastructure that I'm dependent upon, that cloud provider has multiple ways to keep that going because they have a service level agreement or an SLA that they've promised me. So if they've given me 99.9% uptime, I'm not worried about a failed hard drive or something wrong with my server. They're keeping that going for me. The other thing we have is geo-redundancy. So if I'm in the West region, and that's a data center that I'm putting my services in, I'm going to have geo-redundancy to the East region. So that if something happens out here, my business keeps running because the cloud is able to move my operations and the services that I'm dependent upon to multiple geographies. And you configure that as you move up. And then there's peace of mind. And if you have to go into a situation like this in the future, knowing that you have this type of continuity built into your business, that allows you to spend a lot of your brain cycles on strategic thinking about how you're going to get around this, how you're going to get through it, how you're going to change your operations, and not have to worry about your technology being functional. And those are really the key aspects of continuity that you want to bring into the cloud conversation today. So there's three different types of cloud services that you should have in your mind. Most of us are familiar with software as a service, right? SaaS, S-A-A-S. Of course, this wouldn't be an IT presentation if we didn't introduce a few acronyms for everybody. So SaaS, that's going to be, again, Office 365, now called Microsoft 365, where I'm not actually having to install software with a disk anymore. I'm downloading what I need. I'm storing my information in the cloud, and I'm paying for it as a monthly or a yearly service, depending on how I buy a subscription. That capital expense of writing a check and paying for software and then ended up having a disk so that you have to put it into a computer, that doesn't exist anymore. You're going to pay for a subscription. And as long as your subscription is up to date, you're going to constantly have that latest and greatest version of the software. You might be doing this for your accounting software. If you're a small business, you might be using something like QuickBooks Online, where everything is just a hosted service for you. You might be using a payroll service online. Those are examples of software as a service. And then you have platform as a service. Depending on how big your business is or how much data you're trying to aggregate, you may use some infrastructure as a service or platform as a service. Platform might be a database. You might be using some type of e-commerce platform or something to that effect, where you want to, instead of having the servers on-premise in your office, you want to locate those as a platform as a service in a cloud provider. Microsoft Azure is an example. Amazon Web Services is an example, right? AWS and Azure are probably the two biggest ones. You might have heard of something called Rackspace that was pretty popular a few years ago. And Rackspace is more of an indicator of something we call infrastructure as a service, where essentially I'm going to take a server and I want to have that full server operating system, like I can log in like a regular IT person. I'm going to go onto that server infrastructure. I'm going to load my software onto it, and I need to manage and back up and do all that work inside that cloud space. So really three different types of cloud: software as a service, platform as a service, where there's some other aspect of the platform that I'm using that I don't want to have to license separately, and then infrastructure as a service, which really means I'm basically taking my servers and I'm throwing them up there in someone else's cloud. Right? So when we look at software as a service, the model wouldn't be a good Arctic IT presentation to the folks in Alaska if it didn't have an iceberg in it. Although we all know up there that that's the 89%, 11% ratio. This is a little bit different. But when we talk about how much we spend on software as a service versus how much infrastructure we need if we're going to keep that on-premise, look at all the different costs associated with our on-premise licensing and hardware. Ongoing costs that continue to be a burden on your IT staff. They're constantly babysitting technology versus helping you use it strategically and augment it throughout your use in the company. When we move over to cloud computing, software as a service takes all of that infrastructure worry and lets us focus on the application's use in and of itself. So there's no server licensing, there's no software licensing, always up to date, security at scale, because that cloud service provider is required to secure everybody's information, not just yours. Their tools, tips, tricks, scanning, and all the different stuff that they're looking at for your business, they're able to do that at a scale that grossly outweighs what you can afford in your own small business, medium-sized business, even at the enterprise. So the scale of the cloud and the security that you can get is valuable. And then from a continuity perspective, anytime, anywhere, any device. So whether I'm on my mobile phone, I'm on a tablet, I'm on a PC hooked up, I'm at home, anywhere I am, I can get to that information in one secure location and not have to worry about it. So as we talk about the different workloads and the ways that you might move some of those workloads into the cloud, we use essentially a 9-step model. This is something that is a graphic that we'll touch on real quick here, and then we'll circle back around. It's important to have a picture of what these steps include. As people think about moving things to the cloud, it creates some angst and it creates some worry because they don't physically have what they used to be able to touch at their fingertips. It's not in their office building, not quite sure where it goes or how it's getting taken care of, and it's a big leap of faith. So we like to use a diagram and a 9-step program, if you will. We work the program to do the following. We're going to look at a customer's on-premise footprint. Not everything you have, depending on your industry, is a candidate to move up to the cloud. If you are in the medical industry, the manufacturing industry, oil field services industry, anything to that effect, you need compute power local. It can't be dependent on an internet connection. There are some things that you can't move. Can you back those technologies that are required to be on-prem and local up in the cloud so that you have a business continuity plan? Yes. But that's part of that discussion. So we map the dependencies depending on network requirements, storage, and then how distributed is the environment you have to work on. Once we get that documented, we go ahead and we say, okay, what is the best optimization path? And we want to look at, is it infrastructure, software, platform as a service? Pick one workload to start if you don't have anything up there quite yet. Pick one workload, one function inside your business. Develop that migration strategy, look at the pricing, figure out what it costs, and then set a course. Once you get that in place, you prepare that environment, you move that information in a test capacity so that you have regression. So in other words, you don't just move it and hope for the best. You move it as a test, you get all that testing done. If everything's successful, you do a production migration. If it's a critical system, it's going to be in off hours, either overnight or over the weekend. Once we get up to production, we do a quality assessment, we do a security review around the whole thing, we document that, and then we put it into what's considered maintenance, right? So now we want to make sure that we're not maintaining it on the ground anymore. Just because we move it to the cloud doesn't mean we have to forget it. We want to now set up a new maintenance routine, check all the information that surrounds that new cloud service. So business continuity is streamlined, right? So when we look at having to shift from working in an office space or working at home or remotely or whatever the circumstances may throw at us, staggered work hours, you name it, it's all of the above now. As we know, we have precedent for this. The cloud can help us do that. Now there's, again, software as a service is one of those key aspects where that software is always going to be up, it's always available when we need it, and we can use it anywhere we need to, right? So let's talk a little bit about what that looks like. Since we're just coming into summer here, it would be real nice, of course, to sit on a beach with your laptop. I don't know that I would wear the jacket and tie, but if I had to do a presentation, I might have that ready, just in case. We always like that picture. So ability, agility, and flexibility. Those are the things that you want to make sure of when you're considering any application going forward in your business. It has nothing to do with continuity. It has nothing to do with where you're going to use the technology per se, but that ability, agility, and flexibility. You want to be not limited by when you commit to that cloud technology. So you have to be able to ask yourself those questions. What kind of security do I need to employ on this technology? What kind of information am I protecting? If it's personal information or something to that effect, I want to make sure that I'm protecting it properly. Are all of my users going to have this on the phone or just some of them? How many people use tablets? Do I need to use this technology in an offline capacity? We do work in some pretty remote spots all throughout the United States, including Alaska. And some folks have to download the software and information they need local on a device, work with it in the field, and then when they come back and get a network connection, load it back up. So ability, agility, and flexibility. That's what you want to consider anytime you're evaluating a cloud technology. One of our clients down here in the lower 48, large tribal organization, Mille Lacs Corporate Ventures, they had a very distributed business environment. This is one of our clients' comments for us. As we started moving them, different pieces of the business into the cloud, managing that for them also became a broader scope for us. That's a service that we call Arctic Care 365, where they have hotels, they have for-profit businesses, casinos, golf courses, many other venues that they have inside their enterprise portfolio. We use a cloud-based, what we call control and command management center inside Microsoft 365, and we manage all the devices that are inside their enterprise for things like patches, updates, Microsoft 365 information, for example, all of their Word documents, their Excel documents, OneDrive, Teams, all of that is done from a cloud console so that they don't have to worry about maintaining and securing that information. So we'll talk about something else. It's called Microsoft Dynamics 365. That's an example of a business application. At Arctic IT, that happens to be one of our specialties. There's many other examples out there, but this one is a real solid way to look at your business, especially if you have what we call a Microsoft deployment. So if your PCs are on Microsoft operating systems and you're using traditionally what was called Office 365, moving to business applications that interoperate with those technologies, as well as the same security platform that's used across those technologies, that's a really important decision criteria. Don't create additional silos of information if you can avoid it. If you can use a similar technology and a similar platform, there's a lot of economy of scale there, and it makes it more cost effective for you. So inside that Microsoft Dynamics 365, some of the examples would be, and I'll show you here in a bit, an accounting system, a CRM system, project management system. They're all going to leverage some aspect of Azure. So for example, that username and password that you log in with every day on your computer, that actually becomes a cloud-controlled function, multi-factor authentication. So if you log in from an unknown location or device, it'll require something on your cell phone so you can protect yourself from being hijacked, right? And then the integration platform that's part of Microsoft Dynamics. You may have heard of these new technologies Microsoft has come out with called Power Apps, Power Automate, Power BI. These allow other line of business applications to communicate in one place and keep your information secure while it's integrated to the daily work tools that you use. And then the collaboration platform allows you to integrate to things like Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive, calendars, Outlook, and the communication cycle that evolves around the business applications that you have. And this gives you an example of several different components of what is included in Microsoft Dynamics 365. The business application space, if you will, Microsoft has made a tremendous amount of investment over the years. When we look at modernizing that workplace so that you have business continuity in mind, not every application that you have is a candidate to go into the Microsoft Dynamics 365 product line. We'd like to think that they all are, but that might not be true. We drank a little Kool-Aid, of course, but the common data model is the one thing that used to be something only large enterprise could afford. But coming down into the small and medium-sized space now with these business applications to say, if I have a customer master record, I want that to be the same in all the systems that I use, so that I'm using a common data model. When I want to report on it, you hear things now called artificial intelligence, robotic process automation, RPA, all these different new tools, machine learning that's coming out there. Believe it or not, whether you're in retail, tourism, oil and gas, heavy transportation, it doesn't make a difference. Those technologies, artificial intelligence, robotic process automation, right, and machine learning, those are already in place in your industries. They are. If they don't have a place inside your business or you don't know how to consume that information to gain a competitive edge in the marketplace, that's going to be a challenge in the coming years. So some of these platform level decisions that relate to business continuity and cloud also get into the business applications that you use. And that's a lot to take in on a Monday conversation, of course, but it's something that if you have a partner like an Arctic IT, someone in that Alaska market that can help you with that, that's a conversation you should start having. Right? You should start being able to say, I need to look a few years out. I don't have to do all of this at once, but I have to start taking a little bit of a bite at a time. That's a good conversation to start having. Okay. So one of the technologies that we've been using quite a bit is Teams. For a lot of us, we're using Zoom, GoToMeeting, WebEx, but Teams is a little bit different. You know, I would tell anybody if you just needed to have a quick meeting like we're doing today, and you want to have camera, share a presentation, something like that, Zoom's going to be great. You're not going to have a problem with it. It's gotten quite a bit of traffic, as you might imagine, over the past few months. Good for Zoom. But when you start getting into the information sharing and the content and capturing that from an IT governance and security perspective, something like Zoom or GoToMeeting or any of those other technologies loses a little bit of its luster. For those of us that have been able to leverage something like Teams, there used to be a component of Teams called SharePoint, which is where you'd put your content for the Word documents, PDFs, all the different information you worked with. SharePoint became a real big challenge for end users to adopt because it was so wide open and so subject to customization and configuration. A lot of folks couldn't wrap around the governance or the IT management of something like SharePoint. And then came Teams, which combines what we used to call Skype for Business, or that communication and chat, So I have my internal organization chat, I have my phone calling, I have all my document management, and my collaboration workspaces or my teams all in one space. They're not all separate applications now. Working from home and collaborating, we were already using Teams when this hit. So we were in a great position to just take advantage of using Teams. And more importantly, we were able to help our customers onboard Teams very quickly so that they could not only share their FaceTime, but they could also share their collaborational content and work on different things together, editing one document at the same time collectively while they were also keeping that information secure. So that became a real big component of what we've done. Desktop, web app, mobile app. So Teams is available in all of those capacities as well. We talked a little bit about the different components of Teams. If you haven't seen Teams or you want to learn more about it, anybody here at Arctic IT is willing to help you with that. All you have to do is send a message to connect@arcticit.com. We'll help you learn more about how Teams can assist your business. It is free for a period of time right now from Microsoft for you to try out, of course. Right? Virtual meetings, screen share, chat function, remote file access, and Outlook calendar collaboration with all of your meetings and chats. That's a huge advantage if you think about that modern workplace. And if you really want true business continuity in the face of having to work from home or shift the way your business operates, you don't want to have to worry about those things being present inside your day-to-day operations or having to change. You want those to be solid. Security is embedded in that suite. It's important to understand that there are several components of Microsoft 365. And if you didn't catch the memo, Microsoft did change the branding. It was called Office 365. We were all just getting used to calling that in the Microsoft fashion. Of course, they changed the name. So now it's just an all-encompassing term, Microsoft 365. Modern workplace, as we talked about, one of the key aspects, though, is that if you go with one of their business premium or their enterprise plans, it includes the desktop operating system, either Windows 10 Professional or Windows 10 Enterprise. It includes all of the Office 365 applications that you're used to hearing about, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, those types of things, OneDrive, OneNote. And then it includes up to 5 devices and the mobility and security technology that surrounds that entire end user experience. So it's really important to understand that Microsoft 365 has become a big component of business continuity for all size businesses throughout the world. It's even changed the face of our managed services practice. We traditionally and have quite a few customers in our Alaska market where we do all of their IT maintenance for their workstations and servers and users. As Microsoft 365 has crept into our business space, it's actually lowered the cost of managed services for many of our customers, while it's also increased their security posture and put them in a better position for business continuity in the light of what we've just faced. So if that interests you and you're looking to understand more about that, we have clients from sizes 10 users up to 1,000 users that are inside these programs to help reduce cost of IT, but also elevate their security posture and give them better business continuity plan. Threat protection is a big deal. Cybersecurity, especially during times of challenging environments for business, especially when nobody's watching the office, if you will. People get a little bit more relaxed at home in their cybersecurity practices because they're not in that business mindset. We've seen that over the past several months. It's important to know that when you do potentially move some of those things to the cloud, that Microsoft 365 environment has several key aspects that it defends. Not only is it protecting you from email phish threats, it's also protecting your workstation, it's protecting the documents that you open and receive on your desktop, and it's monitoring any of the cloud application access that your users have. So it's very difficult for your own internal IT, regardless of the size of your company, to manage all of them, right? So it really turns security and business continuity in the face of a threat on its head. Business continuity is not just in reference to what we've talked about today with COVID-19 and working from home. It also has to do with cybersecurity. if you were impacted by a cyber incident in the past, or you haven't been quite yet. Notice I said yet, because it's not a matter of if, it's just when it comes to a cybersecurity incident. If you have cloud-based resources with that security at scale and the different encryption and geolocation and the backup and redundancy that the cloud provides, it's not so much that your threat is reduced, because that is a component of it, but your ability to recover and have a business continuity plan that helps you thwart a cybersecurity attack when it happens. That's a massive deal. You have to be thinking that, okay, I need to make sure that if I'm attacked, and I already told you it's about when you're attacked, how do I get around that? How does my business keep going without having to take a beat? Cloud is one of the key aspects of that. And it's not just Microsoft Cloud, but having your resources redundant in a cloud environment is going to be a very valuable aspect for you as you look forward. So we've talked quite a bit about the Microsoft stack. Again, that's where we focus most of our time from a security and modern workplace productivity perspective. Being able to manage all this information in a remote work spot so that business can continue no matter what kind of adversity it faces. That's really the key aspect of our presentation to you today, is to make sure that you know the cloud has a real good spot there. Microsoft 365, Dynamics 365, and Azure, those are really what we call Microsoft's 3 cloud products, right? All 3 of those have the ability to provide you business continuity and peace of mind as you go into the next chapter of business. Ultimately, you're able to save time, you're able to save money and resources with cloud technology and security at scale. The security at scale is really the key aspect here. It's very important to be able to get as much security around the information you protect, and there's no more cost-effective way to do it than putting stuff in the cloud. So as a refresher, 9 steps to move something to the cloud. If you don't have a lot of resources up there now and you're skeptical about doing it, at some point it's not going to be optional. Right now it is. We suggest take something small. If you want to understand it, regardless of your tech savvy, if you don't understand a lot about technology, if you're still wondering why they call it the cloud, if it's on the ground and you can't figure that out, that's okay. Doesn't matter where you are in the business. If you want to take something small and move it up there, that's a great first step. It's a positive first step. And you can use these 9 components to really understand what that process is going to involve. Okay? If you're not quite sure what that might involve, give us a call. We're offering a 2-hour technical engagement from Arctic IT. One of our professionals will get on the phone with you, talk to you about your situation, and help make a pretty quick assessment of, hey, this is a candidate for the cloud or this isn't. This is a cost-effective move for you, or you know what, you just made an investment in some on-premise tech, try that out for a little bit before you consider moving it. That way you get the value out of it, right? There's lots of different conversations to have there. If you want to at least get that conversation started, take advantage of this from us. We're happy to jump on the phone with you and offer that as a service to you. All right, and with that, I'd like to offer up opportunity to ask any questions.
Okay, so we do have a question. Cherie asks about Alaska and our internet connectivity. You know, it could be a little spotty up here. Will that affect her ability to migrate to the cloud?
It is a good concern. It is a good concern for sure. If you have spotty internet or you're not paying for the best bandwidth that's afforded to you, those are 2 different things, right? If you can pay more for some bandwidth, right? In other words, you know, you might be at this level of internet from ACS or whoever your provider is, but you can pay for a little bit more to have better performance. If you can save money by moving something to the cloud and put some of that money that you've saved into spending more on your bandwidth, that's key. That's specifically if I'm working in an office, I have office-based, business-based internet access, and I'm trying to access my cloud resources. If you're at home, and you're using your personal at-home broadband access, right? And you want to make sure that you have the best connectivity. Putting stuff in the cloud will actually enhance your ability to use your business applications versus going from home up into the internet through a virtual private network connection down to your services, back up and down to your house. You're using them all up here. You're kind of cutting that traffic, believe it or not, in half in some aspects. You might be in an industry where using an application as a service real time is not practical for you. At a minimum, you should be at least backing up your on-premise information into a cloud service. That means you don't have to rely on the internet to use the technology. You're still using on-premise, but that on-premise technology is being backed up, so it won't affect your bandwidth during normal operating hours. When you're closed at night, you can have that stuff being backed up. So if anything ever happens to you, at least you have that cloud backup to use and pull back down so nothing gets trashed, right? So there's two different scenarios there, but bandwidth is a concern. I'm not going to lie, if you have crappy internet, you're going to have crappy software as a service. It's just a fact. But you have to evaluate where that value is.
Okay, and then Karen Karen wants to know if the 2-hour tutorial meeting, if that's available for a lay person, like a group meeting of people wanting to learn more.
It is, absolutely. We do a couple different types of scenarios there where we do what's called a Cloud 101, where we go into a little bit more detail about how that migration and what kind of technology is involved. And if you want to make it more specific, we can go through a questionnaire and then talk to you more practically about the technology you have and the opportunity to move something and give you that so it's more pointed towards your organization. Either way, we're happy to have the engagement with you.
Great. And then can cloud technology help with compliance?
Absolutely. That's a great question. Compliance is one of the biggest challenges a lot of organizations face today. Think about the difficult expense and challenge of making your own on-premise environment compliant, from everything from network to data in transmission, data at rest inside your servers, your workstation compliance. Can people see information on the screen? There's certain things, especially if you're like a doctor's office, an insurance office, or something like that, where you're dealing with a lot of PII, personal information, right? Confidential information. A cloud provider that has a certification for HIPAA compliance or PCI DSS, like a retailer compliance, the cloud does offer a lot of that. More importantly, if you place your applications as a software or service in that cloud provider, when we talk about compliance, we're also talking about risk mitigation. You shift a tremendous amount of risk up to that cloud services provider, and they know that. So they have to do a lot more to make sure that your information fits the compliance standards that you request. So if you go up into a Microsoft environment and pull down what their HIPAA requirements are for a business application, you're using one of their business apps and you have that HIPAA certification, you're going to meet a tremendous amount of your compliance requirements for whatever you're going for, whatever the industry is. The other aspect is that if there's a breach, it wasn't on your environment. So you have third-party liability for breach to a certain extent when you think about some of the risk that that cloud services provider takes on. So there's lots of things to consider there. Next question.
Ryan in the chat has a question. How are Alaska businesses adopting to modern workplace/cloud-based management info systems? I've heard Alaska is slower to adopt than other cities. For example, what's the conversion ratio of lead to companies that sign on to adopting a cloud-based system?
That's a great question. He's right. Alaska is a little behind the curve when it comes to cloud, specifically in the small to medium-sized enterprise. Large enterprise that's not just simply located in Alaska, that has other industry in the lower 48, that influence sets up different standards for those Alaska-based locations, and they have, the economy of scale in their favor as an enterprise. But that small to medium-sized workspace, Ryan's correct, a little bit slow to adopt. I lived up there for about 12 years, and I understand the premise of, we're on an island out here in Alaska, right? And when we look at the state itself over the last 3 to 4 months, as you might imagine, tremendous uptick in interest in moving our operations to the cloud, not just at an Office 365 level, but I want to take all my servers out of the office and put them in the cloud, or more importantly, remember that hybrid approach that we talked about? The internet pipe, if you will, from Alaska to the lower 48 to the rest of the world has had many technology lifts over the past 10 years or so. Bandwidth is seemingly starting to improve. The technology is getting thinner. The transmission capabilities are getting a lot thinner. So I think people are starting to now build more confidence in it. At a minimum, being able to take those operations and use, for example, something Azure Site Recovery, which means all the servers I have running in my office in Alaska, I also have running inside Microsoft Azure environment or an AWS environment. That means if anything happens down here, I can switch to those servers in what's called live site recovery. So I'm not backing up everything here every single night. I make one full backup the first time, and then only the changes that are made each day are being uploaded to the cloud. Well, what does that do? That allows you to operate locally and thinly, but then also transmit all that information up into that cloud environment so you have it. And that's line of business applications, things that are very data intensive. If you're talking about things like Word, Outlook, Excel, your hosted email, of course, from Outlook, using things like OneDrive or Teams, that technology does not require a tremendous amount of bandwidth, regardless of the size of your operation. That is something that more and more businesses today are asking us for assistance to move up. The uptick has been tremendous, of course, with recent events. So, good question, Ryan.
Okay, that was all the questions so far. If anybody has another question, go ahead, type it in the Q&A box. If you prefer to speak, you can raise your hand and I'll be happy to let you ask it live. But if that's everything, then I'll turn it back to Bruce, and thank you, Dave.
All right, thank you.
Well, Dave, thank you very much. What an information-packed presentation. It was fantastic. I'm sure a lot of helpful information out there, not only for our members who could attend today, but also we'll have this recorded and have it to their available for the rest of our membership. So again, thank you so much for your time. And Terry, thank you as well for your presentation on Wilson Albers, and we certainly appreciated hearing that. Just a couple of announcements to wrap up. First is next Monday, June 15th, join us for a presentation from Providence on maintaining hospital safety in the wake of COVID-19. And with all of our virtual events, please go to our website at anchoragechamber.org and register for the event. And then just to wrap up on citywide cleanup, I want to thank Kaylin Smith. That's a program that she managed for us. I mean, really from start to finish. And it was a great event. Again, this year looked a little different. I mean, it wasn't concentrated in a short 2-week period. It was really for most of the month of May. But a great event nonetheless. We had about 2,374 volunteers, which made up 215 teams that went out over the course of 4 weeks and helped clean up the city. And we certainly appreciate those folks that did volunteer. Go to our website at anchoragechamber.org and you'll see a gallery of photos of those folks that did participate. But I want to thank everyone that was very involved with that, along with our sponsors that made that event possible. Well, back to the here and now. Dave, what a great presentation on Arctic IT. We're happy we see Mary at our events quite frequently, and so you've got a good person here on the ground here representing your company.
I hope to make it back up. I was supposed to travel next week, but something tells me that it was going to be a little bit logistically challenged with some of those new local rules, especially for a New Yorker to fly in. So I'm going to hold off for a little while.
Yeah, well, we don't treat New Yorkers any different, but it's a problem for us needing to leave Alaska and come back. So I think you're right. That's probably the prudent decision. Just come in at a later time.
Well, take care.
All right, folks. Yeah, take care. You do. Everyone take care as well, and hopefully we'll see you next Monday. Take care.